Oh, damn it. Damn it. Okay, one more time. Got it. All right, that's good enough. Hello. Hello, world. It's me, Riley. I'm a clown. Here I am doing a clown podcast called Clash Clown. It's a show where I think I'm going to try to connect all the dots and see where the overlap and the contradiction is in all of my interests and how they relate to what I do as a clown and what I believe and what I'm trying to do. Pardon me for being nervous. It's only taken me 2 years to turn on this microphone and go live and try this. I'm trying. Here I am. Okay. Thank you for listening to episode 0. This is episode 1. Here's some housekeeping. I have an email address now. It's ClashClownPod@gmail.com. I wonder who's going to be the first person ever to email me at ClashClownPod@gmail.com. We'll see. Thank you for the feedback I've received through texts and Instagram DMs. Appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Okay. So I'm not going to do this for every episode as a novice tarot card freak, but I was intentional with episode 0 being something about the Fool and everything the Fool represents. It was a good intention setter. I also want to just say for episode 1, there's a tarot card called the Magician. And you see in that card a magician, a sorcerer of some kind, laying it all out on the table. These are the tools the magician will be working with. And so, in a similar spirit, I want to mention a couple things that are going on in my mind just to lay the game pieces on the table about where I intend to go for the next few episodes and how that they will inform what this show will largely be about in its early stages, I think. So it goes like this. I've been thinking about 3 of the most influential clowns that I've learned from and how they act as routes or gateways to all of these other interests and interesting figures that I'm trying to learn from and know about and share to you. They are hippie clown, poet, activist, Wavy Gravy. They are clown who became a doctor, Patch Adams. And they are actor, dancer, clown teacher, Gene E. Taylor. It's Wavy who founded Camp Winter Rainbow, the summer camp that I go to and now that I work at. It's Patch who founded Gesundheit Institute and does humanitarian international clown trips. And it's Gene Taylor who taught me theatrical clowning. She's the clown teacher that very gently told me the joy is subversive enough. She's the clown teacher that taught a class at Barrow Group with Seth Barish about story structure in clown acts that led to me being inspired to write the public access robot clown show Klon the way that I did. And that was an instrumental, informative experience in the clown show that I'm writing now about the Grim Reaper. So from those 3, I feel like those are going to be the next 3 episodes. And then where we go from there, I'll explain a little bit later. But it felt strange to talk about these 3 clowns as the most influential clowns that I've learned from and omit the influence of my dad. So this is tricky because my dad is a private person. My dad, there are elements of his story that are very important to him and to me that he has requested that I don't mention. So I'm going to do the best that I can to respect that and do some little dancing around the details and still try to paint a picture that can let you know why so much of this is important to me to this day and how it relates to him. So, how are we going to do that? Let's start at the year 2001, late summer 2001. I am at a hippie music festival in Northern California called Soul Fest, SOL Fest, like the sun, right? It's a pretty typical mid-sized hippie music festival. Patch of dirt, big stage, satellite stages, jam bands, maybe some white reggae, and possibly the worst pizza you could imagine, if you could call it pizza. And my dad, his friend, clown activist named Brino, and Brino's girlfriend Kirsten are running a merch booth called Clowns for Peace to raise money for their clown activist travels with Gesundheit Institute. We're selling clown noses and buttons with funny phrases on them and little toy uh, roses on stems made out of the sliding mechanism of a Ziploc bag so that when you pinch it and slide it one way or the other, it looks like the rose springs to life or curls down and dies. It's like a little magic trick, right? Squeezy toys and maybe like those little white paper snapper popper things you throw on the ground, wind up toys, wind up teeth. This might have been before light up glasses and things like, like frames with little flashing lights in them. But anyway, I'm watching my dad and Brino air guitar with little toy inflatable electric guitars, and they are pantomiming, jamming out to the music on the stage with such commitment that my dad can only do it for so long before he has to plop into a camping chair and roll a cigarette and light it and just hang out. And he's dressed in his baggy denim overalls with hand sewn patches and a long sleeve tie dye thermal and probably a bucket hat with the brim turned upwards. And of course, he's got his very long brown braided ponytail down to his butt. And he's lit his cigarette. He's puffing, he's blowing it in the air. And we're at like the edge of this festival, like the border, the metal fence is right there. And then 2-lane highway is right behind that fence. And speeding on that highway, there's like a little white sedan. And out of the passenger side window, a guy with short, slicked back hair and sunglasses on leans out of the window, while his friend is driving and speeding past this festival. And this fucking guy yells out the window, "Suck my white fascist." The car goes by. And we're kind of stunned. Kirsten, Brino's girlfriend, who is sitting next to my dad, just kind of like out of disbelief, just kind of repeats what this guy said just to process this. "Suck my white fascist." Was this guy actually a white fascist? Who knows? It's a hippie festival. It's it's the 90s. It's 2001, but it's the 90s, you know? So it's cool to dunk on hippies, as always. We're dunking on hippies. It's it's very hard to be committed to this thing, especially me as like a self-conscious teenager hanging out with his dad at hippie festivals on the weekends. I mean, I've recently had my life changed by embracing hippie clownness, but I'm still, you know, in middle school, and I still watch television and play video games, and I'm trying to have real friends at school. So, and I too, I'm stunned by this. It's hard to tell if this guy, this is all we know of him. Was he serious? Was he for real? Is he really a fascist? Is he a white supremacist? It's very easy to yell at hippies from a moving car. It's easy to be outgoing and courageous and making fun of hippies from the safety of a car speeding by, right? But yeah, in disbelief, Kirsten repeats, "Suck my white fascist." My dad puffs on his cigarette and he goes, "Grow one." And that's my irreverent clown dad. My dad is from New Jersey, but he's one of those guys from New Jersey who says that he's from Philly because he loved to ride his bike or drive into Philly, see movies, go to rock and roll concerts. That's, I think he would describe his life changing at these concerts. That's when the world kind of opened up to him. That's where he found freedom and creativity, some kind of community. And this was at the tail end of the glorification of a counterculture movement. And he just loved that and he sought that out. And he would work at the boardwalk in the summertime in New Jersey as a carnival worker, carnival games. That's where he learned the carnival business, the carny business is carnies all the way down. You're roping people in to play these games that aren't exactly what they say they are, but then you go back after your shift and the person handing you your money isn't doing exactly what he says he's doing, and he could quite possibly be miscounting your money, and it's up to you to play the game of, oh, actually I worked this many hours at this rate and you're going to pay me what you're supposed to pay me. My dad also told me that his life was changed when he saw the movie Serpico, which I haven't seen. So I don't know why I'm bringing it up right now, but it's a movie. He wanted to be a lawyer before he saw the movie Serpico, and that changed, in his mind, his view of the justice system. And that tracks with what I know about my dad. And another carny story that my dad told me one time. He worked at the boardwalk in New Jersey in the summer when the Beach Boys were scheduled to play a concert at the White House. And then the president decided, no, no, we can't have the Beach Boys playing rock and roll music at the White House. And so a concert promoter in New Jersey said, just play at the boardwalk instead. So, so the Beach Boys are at the boardwalk, and my dad is on his break, and he decides to go wild during the Beach Boys concert. And he gets onto the sand in the free part of the concert. And there's a girl in a swimsuit that he just starts dancing with like crazy. I don't know how true this story is, but it feels very true for my dad. He's dancing like crazy with this girl that he's hitting it off with on the boardwalk. And somebody passes him like a giant bottle of Jack Daniels that had been like a handle of whiskey that's been passed around, and he's got his finger in that glass loop of that giant jug, and he's pulling from that, and people are cheering for him like crazy. And and then and then apparently this girl's boyfriend comes up with the beers that he was getting for her, and this guy dumps a whole beer on my dad's head while he's in his Carney uniform. And my dad doesn't care, and he's still dancing, and he's kicking up sand with this girl, and everybody's cheering. The more that I'm saying this out loud to you, the more I'm realizing this is probably not a real story. But then so my dad is now very drunk. He's covered in beer, and he's kind of suddenly built up this following, and somehow he manages to lure some of this crowd, a significant amount of this crowd, away from the Beach Boys concert back to the booth where he's in charge of the darts game, or in charge of pulling people in to play the darts game, throw darts at the balloon, win a prize. And he is, at this point, all the walls are down, and somehow this empowers him to be the best carnival barker in the world. And he is now collecting cash left and right, and just managing to spin everyone into playing this carnival game. He's collecting cash like this, handing out darts like that. People are throwing, people are playing again. Boom, boom, boom. And the hard-ass carnival manager of this darts game comes by and notices Kevin, that's my dad's name, Kevin Schmevin, going crazy, collecting money, handing out darts at supernatural speed. And he pulls Kevin aside. He says, you can't be doing this like this. You smell like this. Clearly been drinking. Have you been drinking? No, no, no. And Kevin just opens the fanny pack with all the cash in it, and this stone-faced, hard-ass carnival worker who's seen everything, his jaw drops. And he just takes the fanny pack from Kevin and says, hey, Kevin, get out of here. I don't know. Just that's the kind of story my dad tells me. My dad eventually left New Jersey to be kind of a nomad in California because he loved the Grateful Dead and he loved rock and roll music. And I don't think he had much of a plan. He came to Berkeley and he worked at a grocery store on Telegraph Avenue. He hung out at People's Park, and he made friends with certain hippies who hung out at People's Park. And eventually they trusted him enough to come work up on a piece of land, just do like manual labor stuff, like take care of a garden on a piece of land that ended up being the most famous hippie commune and the longest running hippie commune in American history, the Hog Farm. And my dad was starstruck by everything he saw. And this being a very famous hippie commune, they don't love outsiders because they don't love having to take care of people who don't want to pay rent and want to stick around just because of the vibes. But my dad apparently was willing to do everything, do every dish, do every manual labor task for a chance to stay up there a little bit longer. And he stuck around for a long time. We'll get back to the hog farm in a minute. But yeah, what else do I want to say? My dad is very serious about his spiritual journey. And I don't know how much I could say about that, but he's a very irreverent guy. And he's a very sardonic guy. But it gets very serious very quickly when you're talking about spirit and you're talking about ceremony. And this is where I started to learn about very serious clowns, very committed clowns. Maybe not clowns in the form of entertainment, but someone who sees ironic, inappropriate humor in everything, and someone who's always looking to be a contrarian because it's in their nature, and then someone who seeks that out in a spiritual path. Yeah, that's and so when I start to wonder why that's so interesting to me, it's like, oh, naturally that's because I grew up around that. I was molded in that. And I start to wonder how how did my dad come to revere that, follow that, practice that? And it starts with the founder of the hog farm. It starts with the Pied Piper, the patriarch, the wise fool. So I'll say it like this: I'm probably 5 or 6 years old in the early '90s, Berkeley, California, and I'm at Henry Street in Berkeley. That's what we call the communal house where the hog farm lives for half of the year. Or some people live on the land up in Northern California, and some people live at Henry Street. And it's Christmas, and there's a Christmas party like there always is. And there, we've all eaten around a very long dinner table. It feels like there's hundreds of people flowing in and out of the house. My mom's there, my dad's there, all their friends are there. There's bluegrass musicians gathered around the living room playing Tangled Up in Blue on a fiddle and a banjo and a guitar and an upright piano. And I am overwhelmed, as I often am at Henry Street, because I know all these people, but I don't know all these people, and I love them, but I'm uncomfortable around them because they're loud and they're partying, and I'm shy, and I don't know why I know them, or why they're family, or why they're around, or why I'm around. There's a giant wall in the dining room that's like a mural. It's a mural-sized collage of photographs, old photographs from the '60s, from the '50s to very recently. My brother's high school graduation photo is up on this wall. Baby pictures of mine are up on this wall. Everyone at the party is up on this wall of photographs. My parents, all my friends' parents, all the kids that are my brother's age, that I come to kind of know and respect as my uncles, spiritual leaders. You can very quickly gather that this is a big deal of a wall. And everything is going on at once in this living room, in this dining room, in the kitchen. It's all hustle bustle. And my parents ask if I want to go follow Wavy for a second up to his room. And I'm I don't know if at this age, like I'm not old enough to understand why I'm starstruck by Wavy, but he is like a celebrity. He is a celebrity. And why my dad reveres Wavy so much. But Wavy is a clown. He's not wearing a nose, but he is often dressed in something ridiculous. Everyone around him is always laughing. He is always laughing. And he's always playing with toys, and he's all the kids are he's kind of he does dress up like Santa during Christmas. He's changed out of that because the gift exchange is over. But I'm asked if I want to go to Wavy's room. I don't remember if I'm led by Wavy or if I'm just asked to go up to see Wavy. But I remember the creaky wooden stairs to get up there, and I remember that on the way up the stairs there is a giant painting portrait of Wavy in his black bowler hat with the rainbow on the band on the bowler hat, goofy smile, curly hair. And you get up to the second floor at Henry Street, and there's a door to his room just covered in stickers, stickers for everything, political leaning bumper stickers, but mostly cartoon characters. I feel like the most memorable sticker is there's a Homer Simpson sticker, and it's Homer bent over looking back, and he's pointing at his ass for you to kiss his butt. But there's so many stickers, and you open the door, and in Wavy's room, it's this accumulation of, I want to say, like just a giant tableside, bedside shrine of toys and sacred items. And then pretty much every other free inch of space in his room is just stacks and stacks of books and newspapers. He's always reading the paper, always reading a book. And he's he's excited about his new toy. And it's like a big pack of gag gifts. It's like the cardboard backing for an action figure, and then the plastic packaging, and it's just like lined up in neat rows, different gag gifts. Maybe a fake dog poop, maybe a hand buzzer, a chattering teeth, all in one big pack. And he asks which one I want, and I'm looking over, and being 5 or 6, and just kind of just a kid with an attitude, or just kind of like give him an inch, take a mile kind of deal back then. I really wanted the rubber pencil and the Frankenstein bolts that would attach to the neck. I wanted both the rubber pencil and the Frankenstein bolts. And of course, Wavy, he kind of laughs at how difficult I'm being. And he gives me both. He gives me the rubber pencil and the Frankenstein bolts. And I feel like that's my earliest conscious memory of Wavy. And I go back down to the hustle bustle of the Christmas party at Henry Street. I find my mom, or I find my dad. But even back then, I felt like, just through observation, through the way that my dad would speak about Wavy, there was some kind of precognition, reverence, or just understanding that this is a big deal, that Wavy's around, and feeling shy, feeling nervous to talk to him. But he was, he was and continues to be just this real life committed clown that you could just talk to. It's so strange. It's so surreal. And I guess now I can get into why I continue to find him interesting and why I continue to find him such an inspiration. And then that will, in later episodes, be a jumping off point, be a launch pad for a lot of different directions I want to go in when I'm talking on Clash Clown. um, I'll say this right at the beginning. If you would like a more polished or maybe a more comprehensive dive into Wavy's history and a really terrific interview, it's like spending 11 hours listening to him talk. Um, you can look up a podcast by my friend Thessaly Lerner. It's called American Prankster. She interviewed Wavy during the pandemic quarantine, and she edited together, I think, 11 hour-long episodes all about Wavy's history. So a lot of what I'm about to tell you will be described in greater detail on Thessaly's podcast, Rainbow Valentine, American Prankster, and it's on Spotify. It's everywhere. Also, Michelle Ezrick made a documentary about Wavy called Saint Misbehavin'. Highly recommend checking that out. You can rent that on YouTube for like $8. And then Wavy has also written a book called Something Good for a Change. Find a copy of that. Read Wavy's book. Anyway, when I go to Camp Winter Rainbow, the summer camp founded by Wavy, the last couple of years I've been fortunate enough to be trusted to speak to the staff, the young staff, during staff training. And they're kind of too young to know about Wavy or know about, in some cases, the 60s and why they kind of mattered culturally, politically. So I'm no expert, but I'm doing the best that I can when I get the opportunity to speak to the staff. The official title of the talk is Humor. Riley's going to do a humor talk. And I try to speak about humor as a healing language and as the driving force of the culture of Camp One Rainbow, humor in a compassionate delivery. And I end up talking about Wavy, trying to give some context for who he is, how he came to found this place that we all care about and work so hard for. And I guess I'm trying to call up that talk right now. So I'll say it like this. Hugh Romney was born 88 years ago in upstate New York. And in his 20s, he moved to Greenwich Village. And this is right when there were the simmering, bubbling start of, the folk movement in Greenwich Village, folk art movement. And Hugh was performing at the Gaslight Cafe in Greenwich Village. This is where Lenny Bruce, Bob Dylan, this is where these performers were honing their craft alongside Hugh Romney, who was a poet and a stand-up comedian and an improviser. This is where the beat poetry movement began. Hugh Romney was also, weirdly enough, the first person to bring a beat poetry and jazz music show to the East Coast. He heard about them happening on the West Coast, and he organized the first beat poetry and jazz shows on the East Coast. What I may forget to say later, but I think it's going to become apparent, is that Hugh Romney, Wavy Gravy, was around for so much of the genesis of very important movements. It's very strange that he's kind of like a clown Forrest Gump, where he just happened to be here and there and smart enough to stay motivated and persistent in all of these ways and just be present and be a driving, motivating, connective force. So anyway, both the massively influential beat poetry and folk movement, he's there for that. He's roommates with Bob Dylan in New York. It's on Hugh Romney's typewriter that Bob Dylan writes the early drafts of A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Hugh Romney is also at one point living with Del Close because both he and Del learned and studied improv theater, which was a very new art form at this point. They learned it from the godmother of improv theater, Viola Spolin. Now, to some of you, Del Close is who's Del Close, right? The funny thing is, to some of you listening, Del Close is kind of the reason why a lot of us are in New York. They're why we are obsessed with improv comedy, because the story goes the Upright Citizens Brigade was founded by 4 actors who studied in Chicago under Del Close. They deify Del Close. They named the annual International Improv Festival the Del Close Marathon after Del Close. Because as far as all these young improvisers know, Del Close is the father of this art form. Wrong. It's Viola Spolin. And Viola Spolin's students were Hugh Romney and Del Close, among others. But Del Close, he went on to be this massive influence and mentor to icons like John Belushi and Chris Farley and Bill Murray and the Upright Citizens Brigade. Well, Del Close learned from Viola Spolin, and I kind of see Del Close with his hard ass, never impressed teaching style as kind of like the dark side, right? Of the yin and yang. And I see Wavy as kind of the light. And that's just kind of the way that their lives went. And I don't know if I have much more to say about that right now, but so already folk, beat poetry, the genesis of improv as an American art form. Wavy is collecting these tools, these traditions, these subcultures into this hyper literate, charismatic, think on your feet force of nature, of personality, of creativity. And pretty soon, and my timeline is I'm just going to say right now that it's getting messed up, but we have Hugh Romney doing that to meeting Ken Kesey. Ken Kesey, the writer of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Sometimes a Great Notion. Ken Kesey's the founder of a nomadic commune that was known for driving around in an iconic psychedelic painted bus called Further. And I don't know if or how long Hugh was on that bus, but that was a massively influential moment for counterculture, for people in a time when, I mean, we're talking about like R.I.P. David Lynch, like very, very, white picket fence, straight as can be, middle America story, to being I'm pioneers, right? Of culture, of just trying something absolutely different that people had not seen before, to such a degree that a secondhand school bus painted in psychedelic colors would break people's minds, and they would call the cops on a bus painted wacky, like real life clown car stuff, no circus, full of creative people trying something different. So I'm fast forwarding here, but we have Hugh Romney, inspired by what Ken Kesey was doing, spending time with him, gathering his own subculture, his own circle of eccentric creative people, and getting their own buses and forming their own caravan of nomadic hippies, of people setting out to just set up, unexpected, unannounced, a giant geodesic dome, and setting up a light show and projecting images on the canvas of the dome, on setting up amplifiers and instruments and just doing an improvised concert, a meditation circle, just a poetry reading, a comedy show, like a traveling circus of experimental art, just a happening that would break people's minds open. That was Hugh Romney's thing for a little bit. And this caravan, this commune that's forming around just living like this. And the reason that, again, now I'm remembering from the Saint Misbehavin' documentary, Hugh utilizing fool imagery from the tarot, being this this foolish leader intentionally. What does it say about this group of people that they're being led by a fool? And what does it say about you that you're getting upset or confused or bothered by this fool at the front of this art movement, at the front of this experimental parade? And I think this is a quote from Dr. Larry Brilliant, who I should talk about more sometime, but I'll leave it at this right now. I think in the documentary, he asked the question, what does it say about you? What does it say about you that this clown has read more than you, that this clown is seeking the world more than you? How can you undermine this clown when he is on a journey to be more himself than you, stuck where you are? That last part, that's me expanding on what I think that quote means. But yeah, this idea that this hyper literate, this intelligent, this sharp as a tack into his late 80s clown has, how can you brush off and scoff at what he's done when he is as brilliant as he is? I'm gonna have to rush through this because I realize now this podcast is about as long as the last one I did, and I haven't even left the 60s yet. Okay, so this commune, they come to be known as the Hog Farm. They settle on a piece of land in New Mexico for a little bit. They settle on a piece of land in Southern California. I think it's in Southern California where they settle. They strike a deal with a farmer who agrees to let them live there rent-free if they take care of the hogs. That's how they become the Hog Farm. Eventually, by going out and doing these nomadic happenings again and again, the Hog Farm builds this reputation. Their the way that hippies are largely introduced to America are through Life magazine, when the Hog Farm is photographed for Life magazine. And this eventually, through this and some other I don't know, misadventures, they gain this reputation and goodwill through the burgeoning rock and roll culture to be hired as the staff for Woodstock, the festival, the Woodstock. Hugh Romney was the MC of Woodstock. The Hog Farm was the kitchen staff and the nonviolent security force known as the Police Force for Woodstock. It was at Woodstock where 400,000 people showed up. The festival got rained out. It was kind of a disaster. Where the hog farm introduced hippies to granola. They made granola and they passed it out in Dixie cups best they could to everyone there. It was while they were feeding all the hippies at Woodstock that Hugh had his iconic riff. What we had in mind was breakfast in bed for 400,000. And another line from that speech, there's a little bit of heaven in every disaster area. He just has a way with words. He just has this ability to riff, to be funny, to be real, with compassion and creativity. Anyway, the hog farm and Wavy, their reputation grows. They're scheduled and arranged to host other festivals. And it's at one of these festivals where Wavy is exhausted and lying on the floor backstage one time. And this miracle occurs where blues guitarist B.B. King shows up from his tour bus, unannounced, to play this festival. Wavy's lying there on the floor. B.B. King is doing his sound check, and there's this inside joke between B.B. King and his sound tech, where they speak a loving gibberish language to each other, like you do. And one of the phrases was, I believe, wavy gravy. They would say wavy gravy back and forth to each other, testing the microphones. Everything okay? Yeah, wavy gravy. Da-da-da. Something like that. It may have been from there. It may have, I don't know the full story. Go listen to American Prankster. But in his walk back from the sound check, Hugh Romney's on the floor. And B.B. King calls Hugh wavy gravy, steps right over him. And from there, it was kind of like B.B. King anointed Hugh Romney his alter ego, his name, Wavy. He's been called ever since. All these insane stories that I feel like I'm just going to have to rush through right now. Maybe I can get into some of them in greater detail later on and with some kind of journalistic integrity. But I have to impart upon you, like, it's crazy that a film crew, a movie studio, gave money to a hippie commune to fly to Europe to film a kind of tour that they did where each stop was in a different country to witness a different rock and roll concert called the Medicine Ball Caravan. And then after the shooting for this experimental movie was done, these hippies were just like, hey, can we just, instead of flying back to America, can we just keep this bus and just travel? And the movie studio was like, yeah, it makes no difference to us. See ya. And so they did. And they ended up traveling through Europe, through the Middle East, into Nepal and Tibet at the only time in history when that was possible. Just so happened to be possible for them to do that through the Khyber Pass. And this is where a great spiritual awakening occurred for many of the people who were riding with the hog farm, including Wavy. There are stories of Wavy like a great sacred fool visiting, stopping, and praying at every holy temple that they encountered. Stories of Wavy climbing a mountain and happening upon a Buddhist monastery and blowing bubbles for the monks. And the monks snatching away Wavy's bubbles and proclaiming that they will, on high holy days, they will blow one bubble for Buddha. I am butchering his life story right now, but I'm just trying to explain to you that this is a real person that I've had real, like, consequences of my life directly influenced by this guy. And I feel like while Clown is having a moment in this kind of improv theater style way in New York and LA, to those interested in something deeper than just a way to make your friends laugh and pad your acting technique, it goes deep and strange in some very interesting directions. The way that the main consequence for me, oh my god, I haven't even mentioned the nomadic bus caravan based art project known as Nobody for President. The this satire protest art project that they would do during election years, where they would campaign their eternal favorite presidential candidate. Nobody, nobody cares. Nobody's there for you. You know, who deserves that much power? Nobody. Who's looking out for you? Nobody. Nobody for president. So anyway, sometime in the early 80s, the hog farm settles onto a piece of land in Northern California. They build houses. They know all of these hippies who, through the years of connection, they 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 talk with Wavy about how could we're going off to India on a meditation journey, and can you watch our kids while we're gone for months? And Wavy the improviser, Wavy the clown, starts Camp Winter Rainbow. Wavy and his wife Jahanara and the hog farm. Yes, many people, many artists, many very remarkable people start Camp Winter Rainbow. So it's on this piece of land in Northern California. It's a circus arts summer camp with a heavy emphasis on coexisting in a compassionate, very, rustic, natural environment. Building leadership skills and confidence in kids through teaching them circus skills and just giving them a place to make friends and be outgoing in nature. And so growing up around the hog farm and growing up with parents who met through the hog farm, Camp Winter Rainbow was pitched to me as an inevitability. When are you coming to camp? I have all of these uncles and all of these friends who work there and have grown up there and who love it there. And I'm so creative, this and that. And I'd really thrive at camp. And I am scared to death of this place because, again, back to this feeling of being 5 years old at Henry Street, I just don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. I don't want to go to a sleepaway camp. I'm growing up and I'm starting to understand that hippies are this punchline, and I don't want to be a hippie. I don't want to be around these hippie kids and counselors. And I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like my hog farm extended family. And it's embarrassing to think about. And I'm being forced to do something I don't want to do. And so back with his spiritual heavy-handedness, back with his it's Kevin Schmevin. And he's telling me, he's giving me this ultimatum. It's either Camp Winter Rainbow or Hebrew school when I'm 12 years old. And this is just crushing to me because I want neither. I don't want to go to camp. I'm afraid of camp, and I just don't want more school. And I don't feel, I mean, it's kind of the point of Hebrew school, but at this point, I just do not feel a connection to my Judaism. And it stresses me out to think about it even now. And um, I am so wound up about this. And on my 13th birthday, I remember crying at my birthday dinner because my dad had to bring it up again. Hebrew school this, Hebrew school that. And I'm 13 now, and and I didn't know until years later I was being played. I mean, it's so obvious looking back, but it needed it. I my parents were doing good cop, bad cop with me, and my dad was intentionally laying Hebrew school on me so heavy. I mean, the only thing I ever knew about Hebrew school was that it's the first place where my dad smoked marijuana, which I was terrified of, mostly because just I saw whatever. And and my dad was such a bad Hebrew school student. He was such a rebel that and he tortured his teachers at Hebrew school so badly that at one point his cantor became so impatient with my dad that the cantor jumped up onto the desk and ripped his shirt off and threatened to fight my dad, a 13-year-old boy. Come on. Yeah, just that moving your, that like beckoning, like, you think you're a real man? Fight me. A cantor at Hebrew school ripping his shirt off to fight my dad's jumping on a desk. So I didn't want to go to Hebrew school. I didn't want to be lured into smoking pot, and I didn't even know what a cantor was at that point, and how unusual the the concept of a cantor challenging a 13-year-old boy to fight was. That's just Kevin Schmevin and his contrarian weirdo existence. But anyway, I played right into their hand, and I went with the more desirable option. I went with Camp on a Rainbow, and I finally went to camp in 2001, and it changed my life forever. I got to witness this brainchild of Wavy and Johanara as this incredible community, as this thriving creative sanctuary, as this place where I could decide to be whoever I wanted to be, apart from who I was at school and at home. It was the first, and it is still the most special stage for me to perform on. It's the place where I've made incredibly deep friendships. It's the place where I've seen and I've become intimately familiar with the consequences of Wavy's remarkable life as a community organizer, as a poet, as someone with just an unbelievably singular imagination, a persistent, optimistic sense of humor, and he's a clown. Every night for evening program, hosting in character, in costume, every day, reading to the children poetry by Pablo Neruda, or reading Ken Kesey's children's book with all the voices, leading children in meditation for the first times in their life. For the oldest campers, 14 years old, leading a coming of age ceremony for the next stage of their life with complete seriousness. Back to this idea of sacred clowns and how they're silly, they're irreverent, they're joyful, but they know how to flip it. They know how to turn on the sacred. They know how to turn on the reverent. They know how to bring you in on something deep and real, and how necessary it is to venture into the depths of humor and being unserious. It's equally important to venture into, I want to say, a cosmic curiosity. And that is a huge part of clown for me. And so when I teach theatrical clown, inspired by Gene Taylor, inspired by Patch, inspired by Wavy, all I can really do in the 7 weeks, in the 3 hours per session that we have together, I can only really introduce a door like this. I can't push them through it, especially, if they're just signing up because it's a fun theater thing and a way to meet people and a way to get more comfortable on stage. But I love hinting at this overlap, this contradiction of a sacred fool, of a wise fool, and that they're not just characters. They're still with us. And we have so much to learn from. We have so much to gain from hearing them, from watching them, from observing them, from interacting with them. So that's who I've been influenced by. Um, I was at Henry Street 7 years ago. I was 30 years old, and it was just a quiet day at Henry Street. And I went up to talk to Wavy for a little bit. He had a newspaper like he always does. We talked music. I think he gave me a book. And I knew enough about his history that I knew that 30 was a very pivotal year. It felt like things were really rolling in a significant way. I mean, he had already had these brushes with massively famous rock stars, and he had already been a hospital clown that had gone to Vietnam War protests, and he had come to this magical realization that the cops weren't turning their weapons on a clown. He had come from the hospital. He's still wearing his face paint, and it's because the press were there, and the cops knew that if they were photographed beating up a clown, that would have been really bad. And this led to this contradictory overlap, this intersection of clowning and protest. But anyway, all of these iconic things that he had been a part of or had been called to do, it seemed like he had done a lot of that by 30. And here I was visiting from New York. I had been there as an improv nerd and trying to book commercial auditions. And I wanted to get back to camp, and I wanted to be a part of something bigger. I don't know where to begin. So I think I described to Wavy, I think I said, I just feel very 30 right now. And I don't know whether to stay with what I'm doing or to change my whole life I didn't say it like this, but to be more like him. And I think I was just asking for some advice. And I wanted something hilarious. I wanted something cosmic. I wanted something all encompassing. I wanted to be a lightning rod in that moment for whatever wisdom he was going to generously offer. And he kind of chuckled and he looked down at the floor and he said, just make sure your landlord isn't mad at you. He said, become friendly with your landlord. He was just telling me to pay my rent. And how funny. And yeah, very smart. I haven't missed a payment yet, and I'm doing the best I can to learn from him and his friends and all this famous traveling that he's done, and I I don't think my adventures are ever gonna be quite like his. I don't think my commune is ever gonna be as deep or as eccentric or as thriving as his. Um, but I'm trying to get myself in a position where I can stay learning and stay sharing about what he and these other wise fools have brought to the table. So that's a big puzzle piece right there. Wavy, the hog farm, Camp Winter Rainbow. Eventually, I'd love to bring on my friends that I've met through camp. I'd love to talk more about communes and alternative ways of living. I'd like to talk about that brief moment in time when there seemed to be something approaching a higher level of consciousness in popular culture. I'd like to talk about protest art and where I see clown intersecting with those things. So I think that somewhat covers it. That's one of the big game pieces I wanted to lay out on the table. I'll get back to clown vocabulary. I'd love to do some reader mail, if you want to use that email address, ClashClownPod at Gmail. And I think up next, I'll talk about humanitarian clowning, Patch Adams, and Gesundheit Institute. Then after that, I'll talk about theatrical clowning. That's probably where we'll get back to vocab, technique, and how that overlaps with something more practical, something you can bring into life. But that's me trying to just riff on Wavy and my dad, Kevin Schmevin, as influences. Yeah, Wavy, Camp, Hog Farm. Okay, that's Clash Clown, episode 1. Thank you for being here. I look forward to hearing from you soon. And thanks. Bye bye.